Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Gary stayed at the Cutler plant just long enough to find a new job at another local plant. He got a job at NX, where he worked the same shift for 30 cents more per hour. After being discharged from the hospital, he moved in with his mother along with his sons. Life went on. Gary's mother assumed all of his financial responsibilities. His salary was deposited directly into their joint bank account. The house he shared with Maria remained a kind of sanctuary of their marriage. All the boys' belongings were moved to their grandmother's house, which now became their home. Gary himself took only his clothes and the Monte Carlo car. Everything else remained in the old house. Maria's 1984 station wagon was sold. Since the paramedics took him away from the house, Gary had not returned there. His brother Jack went to the house, collected the necessary things, and brought them to him. Gary's mother made sure the mortgage on the house was paid. She encouraged him to go out, socialize, and maybe even find a new partner, but Gary was not interested in anyone except his Maria. Gary's life consisted of work, evenings at home in front of the television, mowing his mother's lawn, and occasional renovations to her house. The only place he went regularly was the local gas station to fill up his 1977 Monte Carlo. A year had passed since their divorce was finalized. It was 2:45 p.m., and Gary was driving to work. The traffic light on 6th Street, leading to his workplace, was red. He pulled into the left turn lane and waited. He hated this traffic light. The turn arrow always seemed to stay red forever. Something caught his attention to the right. He turned and saw something that made him feel excited for the first time in a year and a half. Gary had always been a Chevrolet fan. In front of him sat a brand new metallic red 1993 Corvette ZR1 with a 40th anniversary commemorative package and bright emblems on the hood, trunk, and side air intakes. He was delighted. He barely noticed the beautiful woman behind the wheel. But when he finally looked at her, his heart almost jumped out of his chest. Was it her? He could have sworn it was Marissa Tomei, the actress. She looked straight at him. Her makeup, eyeliner, and pink lip gloss made her even more attractive. Her medium-length curled hair was slightly tousled by the wind, making her look incredibly pretty. This was definitely her, he thought. Look at this car, and at her. Wow, she is even more beautiful in real life than on the screen. What is she doing here, in this small town? Maybe they are filming a movie or an advertisement. Then he remembered his own appearance. His hair had almost grown back to the length it had been in high school, but now his hairline had started to recede a little, and he began to resemble the comedian Gallagher. He was wearing a dirty old t-shirt and worn jeans. That is why she is looking at me, he thought. The light turned green, but Gary did not notice. The car behind him honked, and he drove off. He took another look at the woman in the Corvette. She gave him a small smile and waved as he drove away. He pulled into Hardee's parking lot on 6th Street and stopped. His eyes filled with tears. He covered his face with his hands and began to sob. The woman who smiled and waved at him, was it Maria? "Hi, Maria," he whispered. After a few minutes, Gary calmed down and drove to work. It was a difficult night, but somehow he made it through. Later, after work, in the shower, he could no longer contain his emotions. Tears and sobs came again. In the 16 years they had been together, Maria had never worn makeup. He had always thought she was naturally beautiful. But seeing her like this, he realized that she was incredibly, amazingly beautiful. She looked so good in that Corvette that he felt ashamed he could not provide better for her. Gary's mother heard him crying in the shower and became curious. "What happened? Are you okay?" she asked when he came out of the bathroom. "Nothing," he replied. "Gary, I know that is not true. What happened?" He looked down at the floor. "Today, I saw Maria." "Have you talked to her?" "What did she say?" his mother asked. No, she stopped next to me at the traffic light. She looked. I did not even recognize her. She had her hair done, makeup. She looked like some kind of actress, Mom. She was so beautiful. Mom, I still love her," he said, and burst into tears again. His mother hugged him. "Oh, Gary, I do not know how to help you," she said, and tears also began to flow down her cheeks. When Maria and James returned from Paris to live in James's house, their nightlife became a daily routine, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. On Saturdays and Sundays, when James did not have to be at work, they sometimes spent the whole day walking around the house without any clothes, having intimate moments in different rooms, or swimming in the pool completely naked. Before their wedding, James took Maria to Columbus for a complete makeover. He told her that she was already beautiful but that she needed to look and feel like a queen. When she left the salon, she looked amazing. He then took her to a high-end fashion boutique and bought her a completely new wardrobe. A few days later, Maria stopped by Cutler to meet James for lunch. When she arrived, she unexpectedly walked in on Debbie. Maria and James had been so busy with their personal lives that she had not seen Debbie since their trip to Paris. When Debbie saw her, she looked at Maria and asked politely, "How can I help you, ma'am?" Maria smiled and asked, "Where can one find a rich and handsome man to marry?" Debbie looked at her for a long moment before finally realizing that it was her friend. "Oh my God, Maria, is that you? You look amazing. I did not even recognize you." "Wow, you have truly transformed beautifully," Debbie said with a warm smile. Maria was wearing an outfit that had cost James $1,500. She raised her left hand, on which sparkled an engagement ring with a diamond about the size of a small state. "We are getting married," Maria exclaimed. A sad smile appeared on Debbie's face. "I saw Gary when he came to work every day before he resigned," Maria said. James had not told her about this. "You know, when Gary found out about you and James, he almost had a nervous breakdown. He spent 2 weeks in the hospital," Debbie explained. Maria lowered her eyes for a moment. "No one told me about this," she said quietly. "Well, since you and James are getting married, you must have divorced Gary," Debbie asked. "What did he say in court?" Debbie asked again. "He just signed the papers, and that was it. We did not even go to court," Maria answered. "I have not seen him since the morning I left home for Paris," she added. Underscore 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 underscore. About 3 months after the wedding, James announced that his old friends were moving to the area and would be visiting them on Sunday. James ordered dinner to be delivered just before their arrival. Charles Johnson and his wife Carissa arrived at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Charles was 50 years old and had made a fortune in real estate. He and James had known each other since college. Not as tall as James, Charles was 178 centimeters tall, had black hair with silver streaks, and weighed about 66 kilograms. He was not a model but looked decent. His wife Carissa, 26 years old, had previously been his secretary. She was very beautiful, 168 centimeters tall, with long blonde hair that fell almost to her magnificent hips. She wore a size 38D and weighed about 57 kilograms. She looked like a real model. After dinner, they moved into the living room and lit a fire in the fireplace. James opened a bottle of Chateau de Cayman-Sac from the 1973 vintage. After a couple of drinks, Carissa began to show affection to Charles. "She became very tender after a glass of wine," Charles said with a laugh. Maria watched in amazement as Carissa and Charles shared their affection. Carissa then looked at Maria and James and asked, "Do you mind if Charles and I make love?" James replied, "I do not mind. I think that would be quite exciting. Do you, Maria?" Maria did not say anything, but the very thought did start to intrigue her. Charles and Carissa continued enjoying themselves, completely absorbed in the rhythm of the moment. Meanwhile, James approached Maria and began to talk to her, holding her blouse in his hands, which had become slightly unbuttoned during their dance. She corrected it with a smile and continued the conversation, enjoying the moment. The room had a light atmosphere filled with laughter and fun, creating a feeling of unity and carefree enjoyment. Both couples shared intimacy for over an hour. They stayed with their partners, but it was an exciting experience. This scene was repeated every Sunday for 3 months. Then other couples began to arrive. Soon, on Sundays, 4 or 5 couples were enjoying themselves at the same time in the living room of James and Maria's house. After some time, James suggested to Maria that it might be fun if she switched partners during their Sunday gatherings. At first, she did not want to agree. Maria loved James and did not want to spend the night with another man. But then she remembered how she spent Tuesdays and Thursdays with James and Saturdays with Gary. Under gentle encouragement from James, she agreed. From then on, their Sunday evenings became intimate social events. James never took part. He only watched as Maria enjoyed the attention of many men. She also saw other women sharing time with several men at once. After trying it, Maria found herself almost becoming addicted to the excitement. She could not get enough. Each week, a different woman became the focus, surrounded by men. Maria began to look forward to her turn, becoming the center of attention and enjoying herself fully. She had almost forgotten her life with Gary and her sons. She enjoyed the luxury of their nearly $100,000 house and the almost daily intimate moments with powerful men and lively parties where she was surrounded by admirers. James recently added a fourth section to his garage and ordered a new Corvette for it. One day, she stopped at a traffic light. Maria was not really paying attention while waiting at a traffic light, noticing an old car in the left turn lane. However, something inside made her glance to the left. Gary was there. He looked worn down, with long hair. She thought he resembled that comedian who smashes watermelons. Gary glanced at her car but seemed more interested in his own thoughts than in her. He looked like a man who clearly had not been in the hospital for 2 weeks because of her care. Maria wanted to show off her new life, but he barely noticed her. Finally, he looked at her directly, but his gaze was distant, as if he did not recognize her. The traffic light turned green, and the car behind Gary honked. Maria smiled at the driver, waved, and then drove on. She did not look back, so she did not see how this chance meeting affected Gary. Underscore 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 underscore. The Sunday gatherings continued. Debbie started attending as well, bringing one of her sons. She enjoyed participating in these events and even tried to get James's attention, but he still only watched. Even when Maria was the focus, James did not participate. He could only sometimes satisfy himself by watching. Maria told him that he could spend a night with other women if he wanted, but only in their own private space. However, she was not sure how she would react if she actually saw him with another woman. Deep down, she was glad that he remained only a spectator. Underscore 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 underscore. 3 more years passed. Maria and Gary, although living only a few miles apart, had not crossed paths since the day he saw her in the Corvette. Their sons were now 18 and 16 years old, and they had not seen their mother since she left for Paris. One day, Maria and James drove to Columbus and stopped for dinner at the refectory restaurant and bistro. James went to the restroom, leaving Maria alone at the table. She heard a familiar voice, looked back, and saw one of her school friends. It was Candace, whom she had not seen since Maria and Gary got married. "Maria, is that you?" Candace asked. "Yes, it is me." "Oh God, it is Candace, isn't it?" Maria exclaimed. "Yes, how are you?" The women hugged warmly. Candace looked around the restaurant. "Gary must have achieved a lot. Look at you. You look like a movie star. Where is he? Do you have children?" she asked quickly. Maria looked down and replied, "Gary and I are no longer together." "Oh, I am sorry. I did not know. I always thought you two would last. What happened?" "He could not give me what I deserved," Maria said. "But you loved each other so much. How long have you been apart?" "For 4 years already," Maria answered. At this moment, James returned to the table. He was already 53 years old but remained an attractive man, although age was beginning to show. Candace noticed that he looked much older than Maria, who was 40 years old. "Candace, this is my husband, James Wilkins," Maria introduced them. "James, this is Candace. Oh, I do not know your last name." "Bergman," Candace answered, holding out her hand to James. They exchanged polite greetings. Candace returned to her table. Maria noticed Candace became a little nervous when James came back. She wondered what it could mean. Underscore 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 underscore. After dinner, Maria went to the restroom before making the 70-minute drive home. On the way out, she ran into Candace, and they continued their conversation. Suddenly, Candace asked Maria, "Can I ask you something?" "Robert, my husband, and I will be direct. We like." Candace hesitated, then continued, We rented a few adult movies for some variety in our personal lives, and, oh, I am a little embarrassed to ask. Candace looked away for a moment, her face turning red. At first, Maria thought Candace wanted to invite her and James to spend time with her and her husband, similar to the gatherings Maria and James had on Sundays. Yes. What is it? Maria asked. How does it feel? Candace looked at her, puzzled. Maria was confused. I was not sure it was you. I mean, you look alike. You never wore makeup at school. When Robert and I entered the restaurant, he said it was you, the girl from the videos, and I just had to come and find out, Candace explained. Since when? Maria asked. Then I saw your husband, and I immediately realized Robert was right. We often see your husband. He stands and watches, Candace said. Did you see me on the recordings? Maria asked, trying to understand. Yes, I realized it was you when I saw your husband. This is him. Well, the one who just watches but never participates intimately with anyone, Candace answered. Maria stood there, unsure of what to say. It dawned on her that Candace had apparently seen one of the recordings of their Sunday gatherings. We have been watching your videos for several years now. I just wanted to know what it is like to be with so many people at the same time. I probably could never do it, but it looks like so much fun, Candace added with a laugh. Maria did not want to make a scene or embarrass Candace, so she decided to play along. Which of my recordings have you seen? What is it called? Maria asked. I am not sure how many there are, but the last one we watched was something like Intimacy with an Older Woman, Volume 10. I envy you and those women when I. Maria watched and Candace said, when all these men are with you, it really turns me on so much that I almost upset Robert at night, she laughed. Apparently, James had installed hidden cameras throughout the venue and was making a considerable amount of money by selling these recordings. Maria never told James that she knew about this. One day, she went to a video store but did not find any copies of recordings with that title. However, rumors reached her hometown, as Candace still had many friends in the area. People began clamoring for these videos to appear in their local stores, and that is exactly what happened. Someone even dropped a copy in the mailbox at Gary's mother's house. Gary was so upset that he took a week off work. This unsettled him deeply, and he never fully recovered. Maria continued her Sunday gatherings. She enjoyed them so much that she could not stop. She knew that the local community was aware of her activities, but she did not care. Her enthusiasm only increased. Underscore 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 underscore. A year later, Maria and James's intimate life had cooled. She could only have a night at the parties. After several months, she began to wonder if her feelings for James were purely physical. Over the winter, the Corvette was left in the garage while James traded her Cherokee for a 1996 Jeep Grand Cherokee. One day, Maria was at a shopping center and decided to have something to eat at a local restaurant. There she noticed an elderly man who seemed familiar, but she could not remember where she knew him from. The man recognized her as well, but did not immediately say why. He approached her and introduced himself as Edison Wayne Franklin, a 70-year-old local resident whose wife had recently passed away. He had returned to the town where he grew up. He asked if he could share the table with her. Maria agreed, and they had a pleasant conversation. Edison talked about his wife, who had died a year ago, and about what his childhood was like in that city. Before leaving, Maria suddenly realized where she had seen him before. Edison often appeared in the newspapers. He had become wealthy in the oil business like his father and was reportedly worth more than $600 million. Underscore 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 underscore. When Maria returned to her car, she discovered that someone had hit the right front fender and driven off. She stopped by James's office to show him the damage, but the secretary said he was out for lunch with his personal assistant. Maria felt anxious and, on a whim, went to the Desiderio restaurant, the same place where James had once seduced her. There she saw James's car pull up. She quietly walked to their favorite secluded corner and saw James with a young woman. His left arm was wrapped around her shoulders. They kissed passionately, and his right hand moved under her skirt. Maria immediately understood what was happening. She silently left the restaurant. Surprisingly, she did not experience any strong emotions. It became clear to her that her days as Mrs. James Wilkins were numbered. Her husband had a new contender for the role of his wife. Underscore 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 underscore. When James returned home, Maria announced that she was going somewhere. She drove past the house where she had lived with Gary, remembering happy times that now seemed like a distant dream. Then she went to the other side of town, the area where her old friend Steve lived. This was the older part of the city, where the houses were well-kept and very expensive. Many members of the older generation of high society lived in the area. Maria pulled into a driveway and then began backing up to turn around. A car was approaching, so she stopped to let it pass. However, the car stopped, turning on its turn signal. Maria rolled down her window and apologized for using their driveway to make a U-turn. When she passed the other car, she saw that Edison Franklin was driving. "Sorry, Edison, hello," she said. "I was just riding around and decided to turn around." "Is this your house?" Edison asked. "It is. Good to see you again, Maria." "What brought you to these parts?" he added. "I was just skating. Nothing special. I used to have a friend who lived here. Do you have some time? Why don't you come over for a cup of coffee?" Edison suggested. "Why not?" Maria replied. She followed him and went into the house. Inside, she told him about what she had seen earlier at lunch, the restaurant where she had seen James with the young woman. After leaving the restaurant, Maria admitted that she did not know what to do next. Edison then said, "Maria, I have to confess something to you. The reason I approached you today, I recognized you from those notes." Maria was silent, just looking down at the floor. She then explained to Edison how James had involved her in the Sunday night gatherings. Maria did not know that James was filming their intimate moments until an old friend told her about it about a year ago. Then it suddenly became clear to her. "Edison, since you recognized me from the recordings, that means you watched them?" Maria asked cautiously. "Are you still active in your personal life? When was the last time you were with a woman?" Edison replied quietly, "Well, I sometimes satisfy myself. It has been difficult since Margie passed away. As for your question, the last time I was with my wife." His voice held sadness. Maria looked at him and said directly, "Edison, I will be straightforward. Do you want to be with me?" He hesitated for a moment. I am pleased to hear this. But you were married." Maria smiled softly. "Well, you saw me in those recordings, and none of those men were my husband. He was usually nearby, watching and mostly keeping to himself. Besides, as I told you, I think I will be replaced soon." Maria straightened her blouse, feeling slightly embarrassed but pleased with the warmth of their mutual connection. Edison gently took her hand, his gaze full of sincere admiration and care. Their evening passed in an atmosphere of deep mutual understanding and tenderness, reflecting a connection that seemed to transcend age. He knew how to connect with her feelings, paying close attention to her every word and gesture. Their conversation brought them both joy and a sense of unity, which Maria valued more than anything. She thought there was a special sincerity and gentleness about him that made their time together truly valuable and unique. Underscore 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 underscore. She arrived home at 11 o'clock at night, and James did not even ask where she had been. She took a shower and went to bed, but could not fall asleep for a long time, thinking about how Edison had made her feel. With James, it was always about the night. He was good, very good, but she missed the tenderness Edison had shown her today. Maria thought about Gary for a moment and realized how unfair she had been to him. She had not heard from him for more than 3 years. What was he doing? Did he have another partner? Was he still working low-paying jobs? She knew she could never return to a life without financial security, even if she loved deeply. Unfortunately, children had never crossed her mind. Underscore 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 underscore. The Sunday gatherings continued, and Maria began to visit Edison a couple of times a week. She liked him more and more. She enjoyed the tender love and attention he gave her, and was especially touched by the sad look he gave her when they parted. She understood she was falling in love. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. A year passed since Maria had caught James with his hand under his secretary's skirt and began her affair with Edison. She still attended the Sunday parties but started skipping some in favor of spending time with Edison. They were intimate several times, even while watching one of the videos where several men had spent a night with her. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Meanwhile, Gary continued sinking into depression. He only went to work and spent most of his time at his mother's house watching television. The only places he visited were the gas station and the liquor store. After seeing the video showing several men with Maria, he had only one reason to live: his children. The thought of suicide visited him more and more often. He replayed his last night with Maria repeatedly in his mind. It seemed to him that what they had was not love, but merely an occupation, something that was tearing him apart from the inside. Underscore 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 underscore. Underscore 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 underscore. Joshua, who was 20 years old and about to get married, agreed to take over the house where the family had lived together. This meant the house would no longer be empty. Gary's mother did everything she could to help her son, even bringing women home who might be interested in him. He was polite but left for his room after a few minutes of conversation. She persuaded him to see a psychiatrist, but after 6 months, he stopped attending appointments and sank deeper into his depression. One day, at about 12:15 in the afternoon, Maria was driving to see Edison when she noticed James in traffic. He was 3 cars ahead, with a woman sitting beside him. Maria decided to follow him. When James turned toward the restaurant, she continued driving past it, turned at the next intersection, drove around, and entered through the rear entrance. She parked about 100 feet away, and Maria watched as James walked to the passenger door and opened it for his pregnant secretary. She waited long enough for them to sit down before entering, telling the hostess that she was there to meet her husband. It was around this moment that she noticed the couple. "Oh, there he is. I will just go up to him," she told the hostess. James's eyes became as wide as silver dollars when Maria sat down at the table. "Maria, I did not expect to see you here," James stammered. "Leave it alone, James," Maria said firmly. "So, does this mean you will finally become a father?" "This is wonderful news," James added awkwardly. Maria blurted out, "The young woman sitting here is looking at me as if she does not understand what is going on." "Well, James, it has already been a year, and you still have not bothered to tell me that Betty retired and that you have a new secretary. What is your name?" she asked the young woman. The young woman looked confused. "Wait a minute, who are you, and why are you here?" she asked. "Nicole," James said. "Let me introduce you to my wife." James interrupted, but Maria quickly added, "No, James, she is my ex-wife." No, wait a minute. "This is not what you think," James tried to explain. "You are an idiot. You did not even tell her you were married. No wonder you never brought her to our house. Did you impregnate her in the backseat of a Mercedes?" "I cannot believe she did not suspect anything," Maria said sharply. The young woman raised her hands and whispered, "I honestly did not know." "Are you telling me no one at the office bothered to tell you he was married? What about Debbie?" "My friend Debbie," a thought flashed in Maria's head. Why has she not told me what is going on? Unless you had a relationship with her too, Maria added accusingly. You had an intimate relationship with her, did you not, James? By the way, I saw you with this girl here last year at Daddario's. Then you had your hands in her skirt. That was at the same table where you seduced me into leaving Gary. Or do you not even remember that? Maria asked. James just looked at her and finally said, We do not have to get a divorce. I thought Nicole could move in with us and stay. And what did you tell her about our Sunday gatherings? Were you going to share that with everyone, or keep it just for yourself? Maria asked. The young woman's eyes grew larger as she looked at James. We have intimate fun in our house every Sunday afternoon, Nicole said. Did he not tell you? James asked. He convinced me to be with other men while he watched and took care of himself. Then he filmed everything and sold the tapes to an adult film company, Nicole said softly. You did not know I knew that, did you, James? Maria asked. James finally said, Go and get a divorce. What will you do? Go back to Gary? He laughed. Have you ever heard of Edison Wayne Franklin? Maria asked. Yes, he's an oil tycoon who returned to the city last year. Why? James replied. I met him last year and had dinner with him, Maria said. So what? The fact is, since then, I have been seeing him a couple of times a week. He has been more intimate with me than you have in the last year. In fact, I was driving to his house when I noticed you and your expectant mother, Maria said. James just laughed and said she was delusional. I think it is time for Nicole to move in. 3 in 1 bed, and you could learn how to please a woman, James said, waving goodbye. Goodbye, James, Maria said. She rose from her chair, walked around the table, leaned toward Nicole, kissed her gently on the cheek, wished them luck, and left the restaurant under many curious glances. Underscore 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 underscore. Maria went home, gathered the things she considered necessary, and then went to Edison's house. When she arrived, Edison met her and immediately realized she was upset. What happened, dear? He asked. I left James. He impregnated his secretary and now wants her to move in with us so we can all share the same bed, she said. Oh God, I am sorry. Where are you going to live? Edison asked gently. I have not thought about that yet. I need to call my lawyer. I really need you to hold me and be close to me as soon as possible, she said, resting her head on his chest. He took her to the bedroom, and for the next 3 hours, he comforted and cared for her tenderly. Afterwards, Edison asked Maria if she wanted to stay with him. He said that he was very lonely and never thought he could love someone again after his wife died, but he had fallen in love with her. Maria told him that she was also in love with him. She explained how James had seduced her and that it was with James that she first understood what intimacy was, but that chapter was over. Edison asked about her first marriage, and she explained everything as best she could. She told him that she and Gary were high school sweethearts and that they had both remained faithful to each other until their wedding night. Maria finally showed emotion when talking about her breakup with Gary. We were so in love, and then I started going to evening classes, Maria began, but immediately burst into tears. I ruined his life. I am so ashamed, she sobbed. Edison held her gently and let her cry until she calmed down. I found a job as the personal secretary to the CEO of Cutler Industries, and everything was going well. Steve Martin was my boss. He was the friend I told you about. He lived in this area, and we were all friends. Gary and I often dined with Steve and his wife, Maria continued, taking a moment to collect herself before going on. Cutler expanded, and the new division had a new secretary named Debbie. We became friends, she said. Maria told Edison that she was a little jealous of Debbie's life, but Debbie was married to a short, overweight man who was 14 years older than her. Debbie often complained that he was not a good partner and that she was seeing younger men on the side. I told myself I would never do that. I asked Gary to find a better paying job so we could have a better life, but he refused to leave the street department, she said. After collecting her thoughts, Maria told Edison about how Steve Martin had passed away and that she had been given 2 weeks off. She then explained how she and Gary had fallen out over his unwillingness to look for a new job. When I returned to work, James became my new boss. He was 13 years older than me, but he looked so elegant. He later hosted a barbecue at his home for employees and their spouses. He invited everyone to swim, Maria recalled, briefly lost in memories. I should not have, but I could not resist. He was so muscular, tanned, and handsome. I noticed how well-built he was in his swimming trunks. It was terrible, but it excited me, she admitted. She then told how James seduced her, about their year-long romance, and their trip to Paris. At the end, she described how she left Gary. I really loved him, but I wanted much more from life. We got married too early, she said. When was the last time you talked to Gary? Edison asked. Maria lowered her eyes and a tear rolled down her cheek. The last time I spoke to him was the morning I left for Paris with James, she answered sadly. It is understandable. Did you see him during the divorce? Edison asked. No. My lawyer took care of everything, Maria replied. Does he still live in this city? Edison asked. Yes, he is probably still here. I have not heard anything about him for several years, Maria said. She remembered the day when she saw him at a crossroads but did not mention it. She was overwhelmed with sadness because of the way he looked at her then, as if she was a stranger to him. Why this upset her so much, she did not know. To Maria's relief, Edison never mentioned children. He did not ask, and she did not tell. Maria agreed to stay with Edison. She called and made an appointment with Porter Carlson for the following Wednesday, his scheduled day in town. As promised, James took Nicole to his home, and she officially moved in with him. The next day, Maria called Debbie and asked her directly, It is all over between James and me. I need to know, are you sleeping with him? After a long pause, Debbie finally said, Yes, I am. How long? Asked Maria. Another pause followed. Do you remember the night James gave you a Cherokee for your birthday? Debbie asked. Yes. Well, after we left your home and came back to mine, Mark was away. I was alone. James came in and slept with me that night. Ever since, we have been seeing each other, Debbie explained. There was silence for a few moments before Maria said, You know, I told James he could be with whoever he wanted as long as he did it in that room on Sundays so I could keep track. But he cheated with you behind my back, slept with this girl, and now she is. Pregnant? Does she know about you? Maria asked. Obviously, she did not know about me, and I am his wife, Debbie replied. I am sure she knows about the Sunday parties now because I told her about them myself, Maria said. What are you doing? When did you find out about Nicole? Debbie asked. Oh, I have known about Nicole for a year now. I saw the two of them at Desiderio. He did not even realize that I saw them. I just found out yesterday that Nicole was pregnant, and I told her about the parties, Maria explained. Did you know that James has been recording these parties on video for many years and selling the recordings? Debbie asked. I also told her about this yesterday, Maria said. Yes, I knew about the tapes. James himself asked me to come to these parties when you were not there. James was intimate with everyone, including me, and I am on these recordings too. But he did not sell them, Debbie replied. Oh, and maybe I should not tell you this, but James made sure that one of the tapes starring you ended up in Gary's hands, Debbie said quietly. What? Gary has a copy? Now he knows I am a social woman who has been intimate with multiple men? Oh God, why would James do that? Maria asked, shocked. Have you heard anything about Gary? Does he already have another wife or girlfriend? Maria asked. He is living with his mother, and things are not going well for him, Debbie said softly. These words were the last Debbie said to Maria. Maria attacked her furiously. Debbie, you came into my life and completely ruined it. I should have listened to my inner voice and told you to go away years ago. And guess what? This is exactly what I am doing now. Get out of my life, Debbie, and never cross my path again. By the way, I know how much you love to brag about deceiving your foolish husband. Well, I now have a new lover, and he really takes the time to give me unforgettable moments. Have you ever heard of Edison Wayne Franklin, the $6 million man? Ever since I saw James with his little girl in D'Addario's last year, Edison has been intimate with me, and now I have moved in with him. Live your life, Debbie. I have a feeling that Mark will soon start watching adult films. Maybe you can move in with James and Nicole. Goodbye. After that, Maria hung up. She told Edison about her conversation with Debbie, and he offered to help in any way he could. Edison hired a private investigator to gather information about Debbie Nolan and to obtain copies of videos showing Debbie engaged in inappropriate acts. In the meantime, Maria attended an appointment with a lawyer the following Wednesday. Instead of Mr. Carlson, who was at a court hearing, she was received by his colleague James Wellington Ballard from the firm JWB and Porter Carlson. When Maria entered his office, she was amazed. Her face flushed red. He was incredibly handsome. Mr. Ballard was only a year older than Maria. Standing 6 feet tall and weighing 185 pounds, He resembled John Travolta but with more masculine features. Maria could not take her eyes off him, and when he spoke, she felt how attracted she was to him. He was so charming. Maria filed for divorce from James and left the office. A few months later, the divorce was finalized. On the day this happened, Edison found Maria crying and asked if she was upset about everything that had happened with James. She replied, "What upsets me the most is what I lost because of James." She admitted, "I probably never really loved him. I was attracted by the excitement and the rich lifestyle." Edison, "I know you love me, but that is only because your wife is no longer here. You will never be able to love me the way you loved her. I love you, but I think deep down I still love Gary. I have always loved him," Maria said, tears flowing down her face. "You have to," Edison started, but Maria did not let him finish. "Find him and tell him about it," Edison suggested. "No, I cannot," Maria replied. "You do not understand. You had no choice. Your Margie died, and I myself ruined what I had with Gary, and I do not even know why I did it. I was a fool. Let me tell you about the last time I saw him." "You already told me about this, about the day you left for Paris," Edison said. "No, I did not. I did not talk about the last time I saw him. I did not talk to him then. I just saw him. This was about a year after our divorce. I was on Calverton Street and stopped at the light at 6th Street. James had just given me that new Corvette, and there was a decrepit old car parked in the turn lane. I still do not know why I looked. Something just made me look to my left. And there he was. He was waiting to turn left. He must have been on his way to work because he was wearing old, threadbare clothes. I am embarrassed to say this, but the thought that he was just driving to work did not even cross my mind. I muttered under my breath that he looked like a poor man." Maria burst into tears, her body shaking with sobs. When she calmed down a little, she continued, "There is something I never told you, Edison," Maria said, trying to stop her tears. "Gary and I have 2 sons. I have not seen them since the day I left." Now her tears flowed as if from a broken dam. Edison looked at her in shock. It was heartbreaking not only for her but also for those boys. They are 20 and 18 years old. They are already grown men, and oh God, she sobbed. Gary was just doing his duty, going to work to take care of our boys. Edison hugged her until she calmed down. In general, I then looked down on him, but he was very interested in cars. He was always a Chevrolet fan and had a red Chevelle in school. He looked and looked at the Corvette. "Did he notice that you were driving?" Edison asked. "Well, he looked right at me as if through me. I wanted to show him the Corvette to make him jealous, but really I could not. I wanted to ask him how he was doing, but I did not." "But you did not let him know that you recognized him. You did not react at all?" Edison asked. "No. His look was as if he did not even recognize me. It was like a stab in the heart. The light changed to green, and I smiled at him, waved a little, and drove away," she said, wiping away a tear. Time passed. 3 videotapes addressed personally to him arrived at Mark Nolan's supermarket office. A note was attached to them. It read, "This is what your wife does in her free time." Another envelope contained a series of photographs of James going in and out of Mark and Debbie's house and from dark corners of restaurants with his hand up Debbie's skirt. The note accompanying these photographs said, "The man in these pictures is the CEO of Cutler Industries. His name is James Wilkins." Mark and Debbie's divorce was messy, and Debbie ended up with almost nothing. James gave Maria her Corvette and new Grand Cherokee because he did not need them. Of course, this happened before everything went wrong, so to speak. Mark filed a lawsuit against Cutler Industries citing the non-personality clause in the contract. After he obtained the videotapes, he installed hidden cameras in his and Debbie's bedroom. Less than a week later, he received a movie-quality recording of James and Debbie being intimate. Mark presented all the recordings and photographs, including those from the Sunday gatherings where James usually just watched and satisfied himself, to the Cutler board of directors. James quickly resigned and left. Nicole gave birth to a child, but Maria's revelations at the restaurant greatly overshadowed their relationship, and it lasted only a month. The results of a paternity test revealed that the child was indeed James's. At that time, his income was quite large, and he had to pay substantial alimony. Maria stayed with Edison. Although they did not marry, they lived as husband and wife. She slept in his bed, and they still shared regular nights together. They loved each other, but they both knew that their true soulmates were other people. Despite all the Sundays Maria spent in unrestrained intimate moments with different men, nights with Edison were satisfactory, but she missed being passionately desired and truly owned. She managed to hold out for 2 years, having intimate relationships only with Edison. One day, she was walking downtown when, on a Wednesday afternoon, Maria Wilkins ran into Jace Ballard, her divorce lawyer. "Hello, Mr. Ballard," Maria greeted him, feeling a slight trembling in her lower abdomen. "Damn, he is so handsome," she thought. "Are you busy or in a hurry? Can I buy you a cup of coffee?" he asked. She agreed, and they walked down the street to Starbucks. They spent the next hour talking, and Jace told her that he had wanted to ask her out when he was still her lawyer but thought it would be unethical. They spent the rest of the day in his office, where there was a small apartment for him or his assistant to stay if necessary. Jace proved to be just as impressive as James in many ways, but he was much more skilled. Maria had the best time of her life that day. After that, she and Jace started meeting in his office every Wednesday. She explained her situation with Edison and told him that she had fallen in love with Edison and did not want to leave him alone. Jace understood everything. August 2001. It had been 10 years since Maria and Gary divorced, and 9 years since Gary last saw Maria. He knew nothing about Maria's and James's divorce or how James had left in disgrace. Thoughts of the last night they spent together still haunted him, just like the memories of what he had seen on that tape where Maria had spent a night with several men. It had almost destroyed him. He still did nothing but work and watch television. Joshua, now 24, had gotten married, and he and his wife lived in Gary and Maria's old house. Gary could not bring himself to go back there. There were too many memories. Jake, now 22, owned his own apartment. Maria continued to live with Edison. Their intimate life had been reduced to once or twice a month, but Maria still enjoyed the tenderness and love he gave her. She continued to date Jace Ballard, and to be honest, she was in love with him. Gary had not crossed her mind for a long time. She deliberately pushed away thoughts of him because she knew it upset her. During this time, Edison was honored as an outstanding citizen for donating $1 million to rebuild the city park. The small ceremony was to take place in the city center, and Edison insisted that Maria be with him. Maria was about to turn 47 the next month, but she had not changed a bit since Gary last saw her. She was still gorgeous. Gary got home from work in time to check the weather forecast and have time to shower before a late-night movie started at midnight. He turned on the television and started watching the forecast. When the weather forecast ended, the presenter said, "And lastly, we have video from the celebration in Tyler Park this afternoon. John, can you tell us what happened there on that beautiful sunny summer day?" The pre-recorded video began. "Well, Bob, thanks to the magic of television, we will be transported to today's event. Oil tycoon Edison Wayne Franklin, worth an estimated $600 million, donated $1 million to help redevelop Tyler Park. Here he is with his beautiful wife, cutting the ribbon to open the project." Gary stood up from the couch, about to go to the shower, but suddenly glanced at the television screen. In this old man's hand was his Maria's. The camera zoomed in on the moment she kissed the old man on the cheek. It was her, without a doubt. He stood stunned. The way she looked at this old man was the way she once looked at him. Barely making it to the shower, he burst into tears. He hardly slept again, thinking about his life with her, about how he first looked into her brown eyes 31 years ago. The next day, Gary was at work when he started having chest pains and fell. He was rushed to the hospital, and doctors diagnosed him with a stroke. After further examination, chronic heart failure was discovered. He never returned to work. Now he sat on the couch all day long, drank, and sometimes went out onto the porch. The following month, Edison planned to take Maria to London to celebrate her birthday. Although Maria did not want to be away from Jace for too long, she was still looking forward to the trip. However, a few days before their departure, the events of September 11th occurred. The scenes shown on television deeply shocked both Maria and Edison, especially Edison. Never in his wildest dreams could he have imagined that this beloved country would come under attack. On the afternoon of September 12th, Edison suffered a massive heart attack. Although he survived the initial attack, he never regained consciousness. Maria was heartbroken but found comfort in the thought that he was now reunited with his Margie. Gary had seen the news story that Edison had died but had not paid enough attention to the report from Tyler Park a month earlier to realize that Edison was the same old man that Maria had been with. Besides, like everyone else, he was more focused on the coverage of the attacks on New York. Maria never expected anything from Edison. He and Margie had 4 children, many grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, so she was shocked to learn that he had left her $3 million. The first thought in her mind was to find Gary and her sons. They could live comfortably with that kind of money. She had not heard from him or her boys for a long time, The only thing she knew for sure was that the last time she had heard from Debbie was when she told her that James had sent Gary a copy of one of her private videos and that Gary was living with his mother. But even before that, she had not heard anything for a long time. After Edison's death, Jace and Maria decided to slow down their relationship for a few months so she could grieve and recover from the loss. Edison's family told Maria that she did not need to rush into moving. They did not know the full depth of her relationship with Edison, but they understood that they were very close. During this time, Maria drove past her and Gary's old house and Gary's mother's house several times but never saw him or her sons. One day, she noticed Gary's mother getting out of a car and walking into the house. She almost stopped but changed her mind. How would Gary's mother feel about her after everything that had happened? She drove past her old house again and realized that someone was living there. Could it be Gary? Maybe he had someone. She saw Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, her former neighbors, decorating the house for Halloween. They still lived next door. Maria stopped and opened the car door, but the Wilsons were staring at her. She lost her courage, got back into the car, and drove away. She could tell from their expressions that most of her former acquaintances probably knew every detail of what she had done to Gary and perhaps even about her private videos. The next day, Maria contacted Edison's family to thank them for allowing her to stay in the house and told them that she was planning to move. Maria's main car was a Grand Cherokee. The Corvette was stored in a large warehouse that belonged to Edison. The room was filled with belongings of his family. They told Maria there was enough space there, and she could leave the car there for as long as she wanted. They thanked her for being there for their father when he needed support and for making him happy. Early in the morning, she folded down the back seats of the car and packed all her things. She wanted nothing more than clothes. She took one last long look at the house that had been her home for the past few years, got behind the wheel, and drove around the city, visiting places that mattered to her. She stopped at the house where she grew up, then at her high school. She parked at the church where she and Gary had been married 26 years ago. Her eyes filled with tears as she remembered leaving the church, walking down the steps, and getting into Gary's red 1969 Chevelle. At that time, they had their whole lives ahead of them. Why had she ruined everything? She pulled away from the church and passed the insurance agency where she worked at the beginning of her marriage to Gary. Then, on her way to Cutler Industries, she passed the streets department. If only she had not forced Gary to quit. She pulled into the Cutler parking lot, wishing she had taken a job there. Maria remembered the day she arrived and saw an ambulance at the entrance. That incident had sealed her fate. She drove past her former mother-in-law's house one more time, still hoping to see Gary if he was there. She stopped again at the house she and Gary had shared. She paused briefly and thought about her last conversation with Gary. Why had she not stayed? Why had she left? As she drove away, she saw a young pregnant woman leaving the house and getting into a car. The woman smiled at Maria as she passed by. Maria decided that someone else must have bought the house from Gary. But then, like a bolt out of the blue, a frightening thought came to her mind. Could this young woman be Gary's new wife? Is it possible that he is expecting a child with someone else? She pushed those thoughts away. No, it is not like that. She must be the wife of someone else, Maria told herself, not suspecting that this young woman was her daughter. Maria's daughter-in-law was there, carrying her grandson. There was one more place Maria wanted to visit before she left. She headed toward Willow Creek Estates. On the way, she was stopped at a traffic light on 6th Street. Maria looked to her left and saw a man in a car in the turning lane. For a moment, she thought it was Gary. She remembered the day, 10 years ago, when she had last seen him. The light turned green, and the car behind her honked its horn. This time, she knew she had to move on. She continued on her way with a heavy heart. When she arrived at Willow Creek, she drove to the house she had shared with James. Not much had changed. A few minutes later, she thought, this house is not a good place. It is filled with pain. What happened here ruined my life. About 10 minutes later, she was driving north toward Columbus. Maria never thought much about it before, but she found herself outside the circle of friends and acquaintances she had during her marriage to Gary and her life in high society for more than 10 years. Maria avoided everything that reminded her of the past. She deliberately avoided people she knew. Whenever she was around them, they acted as if they did not recognize her. What she had done, those private parties and videos, were somewhat commonplace among the elite. Although most of her old circle knew about her life in general terms, she had completely erased her past. She knew very little about her old friends and family. Even some events that made headlines in the local newspapers passed her by unnoticed. She lived in her own little world. The house in Willow Creek Estates where she had lived with James was only a few miles from the city, but it felt like 1,000 miles away. Life in Edison's house in the heart of the city was no different. For these reasons, Maria left the city. Her estrangement from her old social circle was also why she never found out anything about Gary or her sons. Upon arriving in Columbus, she visited the law firm of JWB and Porter Carlson. Jace was very happy to see her and invited her to dinner. They discussed her plans for the future in connection with moving to the city and eventually ended up at Jace's house. Maria moved in with Jace, and they were married within a year. Once again, Maria lived in luxury. They built a new house worth over $1 million. Jace provided her with new cars every year, although ironically, she preferred to drive a Monte Carlo rather than the more expensive cars he offered. In the winter, she chose a Grand Cherokee while Jace drove a Jaguar. They attended parties at the governor's mansion. The governor was a close friend of Jace's. There were frequent trips to Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Miami, as well as many trips to Europe. This life was much more luxurious than her life with James. Time passed. Maria loved Jace, but she still felt empty. Something was missing. She grew bored, so she became her husband's personal secretary just for a hobby. She even co-starred with him as the face of their new television ad campaign. It was 2010. Maria and Jace were watching television late on a Friday night, waiting for the premiere of their new commercial on WBNS TV Channel 10. Maria was nervous, afraid she might look ridiculous on screen. She felt a slight sense of shame as she remembered a short story she had once filmed with Edison in Tyler Park. When the commercial ended, Maria was suddenly overcome with a sadness she could not explain. She got up from the sofa, quickly went to the bedroom, and lying on the bed, began to cry. Jace followed her. "Maria, are you okay? What is wrong?" "You were simply magnificent on screen," he reassured her. "No, that is not the point. I cannot explain. It just suddenly came over me. I do not know what is wrong with me, but I feel so sad," Maria said. At that same moment, about 60 miles southwest of Columbus, Gary was barely out the door of. After that night, Gary never watched Channel 10 again. His mother happened to see the advertisement the following week but never told him about it. Neither Josh nor Jake paid enough attention to the commercial to notice that their mother appeared in it, and no one mentioned it to them or to Gary. The following year, Gary's mother died of cancer, and he fell into an even deeper depression. Josh and Jake visited him regularly, and his brother Jack came to stay with him for several months. In 2012, Maria was helping Jace with a personal injury case and traveled to Riverside Manor, a nursing home and long-term care center, to meet with a client who was to testify. While there, she felt sad again. She managed to compose herself until she reached the car. There, she held back as best she could but still shed a few tears. She thought it might be worth seeing a psychiatrist to figure out why these bouts of sadness overtook her repeatedly. "I will talk to Jace and ask him what he thinks," she told herself. Driving back to the office, she stopped at a traffic light that reminded her of the intersection in her hometown where she last saw Gary 20 years ago. The time of day, lighting, and surrounding landscape were almost identical. While these thoughts were running through her mind, a car pulled up beside her in the next lane. She looked over and saw a young woman, probably in her early 30s, with two boys about the same age as her sons had been when she last saw them. The turn signal on the woman's car blinked at the traffic light, and Maria watched as the car turned the corner. She could hardly believe her eyes. Could it be her old car, an '84 model? It was either her old car or an identical copy. As she watched the car driving away, a horn sounded behind her, pulling her out of her trance. She resumed driving. On the way back, she was again overcome by sadness, though not as strong as before, but still very real. Back at the office, Maria told Jace about the feelings she had experienced both at Riverside Manor and on the way back. Jace called Dr. William Spencer, a psychiatrist he had represented in a divorce case several years before. He asked the doctor to see Maria as soon as possible. Fortunately, the doctor had an opening and was able to see her the next day at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That evening, Jace and Maria went out to dinner. Jace noticed something was troubling Maria and asked if everything was all right. "No, nothing like that right now," Maria answered. "But I have a strange feeling I cannot explain. It feels like something is wrong, like I forgot to do something important. Did I miss anything in your office?" "No, but we need to be back at Riverside at 1 o'clock tomorrow," Jace replied. "For what?" Maria asked. "I thought Mr. Green told me everything he could remember, or at least that is what he said. His wife filmed the whole thing on her phone but was so shocked that she forgot about it until she reviewed the footage before deleting it. She seems to have lost several videos of their grandchildren because she forgot she was recording them. Now she checks carefully before deleting anything, Jace explained with a laugh. Why does she not just come to the office and show us the phone? Maria asked. She does not want to do anything without her husband by her side, Jace answered. For some reason, the last words Jace said gave Maria chills. She could not understand why, but she literally felt cold after hearing them. After dinner, Jace and Maria drove north on Highway 71, then west on 36, north on 3B and K Road. Jace turned west again onto Howard Road, drove a short distance, and then turned north onto Hogback Road. After a while, he pulled into a small parking area near Bald Lick on Alum Creek Lake. It was a place away from the city lights with a beautiful view of the night sky. They got out of the car and walked hand in hand. Even though she was with Jace, Maria could not get Gary out of her mind. Something about the sight of the stars and the feel of the night air reminded her of him. Why could she not get him out of her head? She had not seen him for over 20 years. What was wrong with her? When they returned home, Maria logged into Facebook. She had a strong desire to find out if Gary was there. She did not understand why she had never tried to find him before, but for some reason, it had never occurred to her. She found a page for his brother Jack Arthur and his wife, but there was no mention of Gary on their pages. Maria entered his name and found 15 users named Gary Arthur, but none of them were him. Apparently, Gary did not use Facebook. She wanted to find her children, but she was afraid they might reject her. She signed out of her account and turned off her computer. After a while, Maria told Jace that she was very tired and went to bed. She had a dream so vivid and realistic that when she woke up in the morning, she was confused and could not tell what was dream and what was reality. It was still dark outside when she woke up. She realized the man lying in bed next to her was her husband, but she needed to check something. Maria stood up, walked to the window, and looked out. She was in Columbus, in the house that Jace had built, not in her old house. It was Jace who lay next to her, not Gary. Her heart sank. She wished that the last 22 years had been just a dream. Maria dreamed that she and Gary took their young sons on a picnic. The boys went to play while she and Gary hugged, kissed, and exchanged words of love. Everything seemed so real. She remembered every word of their conversation. They returned home, and when the boys fell asleep, Gary made love to her tenderly and reverently. Then she fell asleep and had another dream in which she and Gary were driving down country roads in their Corvette convertible with the top down. She woke up in her sleep, snuggled up to Jace, and hugged him tightly. Then she woke up in reality, though it felt like she had just dozed off again. Waking fully, she felt very embarrassed. Maria went to the kitchen, completely absorbed in thought. Memories of her life with Gary flooded her mind. When Jace got out of bed a little later, he walked into the kitchen and saw Maria in tears. "What happened?" he asked. "This is Gary, my first husband. I never told you the details of our divorce, how I treated him, and what I did to him. It was not fair. I dreamed about him last night. I thought so. You hugged me and said, 'I love you, Gary,'" Jace replied. "Do you want to talk about it? Or will you wait until you see Dr. Spencer this afternoon?" "I will wait, but I promise to explain it to you later." Maria smiled faintly and continued, "The Corvette, my car, I almost forgot about it. It is still in Edison's old warehouse. I have decided, I almost feel that I owe it to him. I want to give my car to Gary. He has always loved Chevy. He had a '69 Chevelle when we got married. The last time I saw him, I was driving that car, and he paid more attention to the car than to me." Maria laughed as she said this, but Jace sensed the sadness in her voice. "We have a busy day ahead. We better take a shower and get ready," Maria said. They showered together but did not make love. Maria just wanted Jace to hold her. After lunch, Maria and Jace drove to Riverside Manor to meet Mr. and Mrs. Green. Jace talked to them and transferred Mrs. Green's video to his laptop. While they were in Mr. Green's room, a wave of extreme sadness swept over Maria again. She excused herself and quickly walked to the women's restroom through the hallway. There, she burst into tears. This feeling was much stronger than all the previous episodes. The sense of loss was overwhelming. It took her 10 minutes to pull herself together. Finally, she was able to calm down and return to the room. "I hope Dr. Spencer can figure out what is going on with me," she said to herself as she left the restroom. Jace was just finishing up with the Greens when Maria returned. "Are you okay, honey?" Mrs. Green asked. Yes, everything is fine. It is probably just an allergy," Maria answered. Jace looked at her as they left the room. He noticed she was crying. He was about to ask if everything was all right when suddenly he heard Maria turn to someone. Maria walked out of the room ahead of Jace and turned right, almost colliding with. Maria was walking down the hallway when she almost collided with Gary's little brother, Jack. "Oh, sorry. I did not mean to," she said, frozen in surprise. Her first thought was that Jack was here with their mother. Maria was already 58 years old, and their mother would have been over 80. She did not know that their mother had passed away a year ago. Maria quickly looked around, hoping to see Gary. Jack looked at her blankly, not quite sure if he was really seeing who he thought he was. "Hello, Maria," he said. Both of them were stunned and did not know what to say. Jace stood nearby, a little puzzled. "Jace, this is my first husband's brother, Jack Arthur," Maria said, clearly nervous. "Jack, this is my husband, Jace Ballard." Jack recognized Jace from some commercials. The men shook hands while Maria explained why she and Jace were at Riverside. Hesitating and unsure how to continue, she asked, "Is your mother here in this institution?" Before Jack could answer, she asked again, "What about Gary? Did he marry again?" Jack, unsure how to answer, asked, "How long have you been out of the loop?" Anxious thoughts swirled in Maria's mind. She did not know if she really wanted to know if Gary had remarried. Perhaps her sadness came from somehow feeling his pain. Is his mother sick? She reflected on her decision to give Gary the Corvette. Then she told Jack, "I have something I think Gary would really like." "Is Gary here? I would like to see him. I have something I want to give him." Jack raised his hand to stop her and motioned for her to follow. He turned and walked down the hallway, stopping in front of room 214. Maria and Jace followed. A few months after his mother passed away, Gary had another stroke. He had been at Riverside for several months. It was the only facility within several hundred miles specializing in his condition. Jack asked Maria to wait in the corridor and went into the room. Maria was nervous but a little excited. So Gary was there, she thought. Would he want to see her? Would he turn her away? How would she react if she saw him? Deep down, she knew she wanted to run to him and ask for forgiveness, telling him she still loved him. But she knew that would never happen. She also loved Jace and could not do to him what she had done to Gary. She wanted to turn around and run away. A few minutes later, the door opened and Jack stepped outside. "I talked to everyone. They said it was normal, but I need to explain something," he said. Opening the door again, Jack began to tell the events of the last 2 decades. Maria was stunned to see Joshua, now 35, in the room with his arm around a beautiful young woman. Jake, 33, stood nearby, also hugging his wife. On the chair behind them sat 2 boys who looked to be about 9 or 10 years old. Although Maria looked around, Gary was nowhere to be found. Her heart was filled with emptiness. She really wanted to see him. She noticed that everyone looked as if they had been crying recently. No one was smiling. Barely listening to Jack's words, Maria returned to reality, trying to absorb at least some information about Gary. "We lost our mother last year, and Gary, about 15 minutes ago," Jack said. What did he just say? Flashed through her mind. She turned her attention to the man lying on the bed. Gary was lying there. He had died just a few minutes ago. She was only a few steps away from him when he passed. Jack left the room to call the nurse, while Gary's sons and their wives said goodbye. Jack ran into Maria. Maria looked at Gary. His hair was still black and carelessly disheveled, with only a touch of gray. She saw his thin figure and remembered how she once pushed him on the shoulder in class. Here lay the love of her life, and he was no longer there. She would never be able to tell him that she still loved him. She looked at her children, already adults, and tears flowed from her eyes. "No, no, no," she screamed, stumbling and falling onto the bed next to Gary. Thank you for reading. Please subscribe to our channel to follow more heartfelt stories. If you're under 18, please choose another story. Click to listen to the next story.